Welcome. Jump into the Compassionate Leaders Circle podcast, where leading with love isn't just nice, it's genius. I'm Laurel Donnellan.
And I'm Darryl Brown. We'll unpack business strategies infused with empathy and action, driving both profit and purpose. Our world is ever-changing, so discover how the savvy leader wears compassion as their power suit.
I'm Meryl Eriksen, a faculty member at Compassionate Leaders Circle and the founder of Pink Pineapple Cooking. I teach kids, teens, and adult cooking classes in my community. And with CLC, I work as a facilitator and speaker. I'm a fierce believer that food is one of humanity's oldest and most powerful forms of care. And my work blends sort of leadership development, purpose, and the power of food together. I'm especially excited because the heart of my work is helping people feel seen, supported, and empowered through food and great leadership. And our guest today has shaped the modern landscape of food justice, hospitality, and community care. I watched the first season of Top Chef while I was in culinary school. Before streaming existed, we were crowding around a TV in the common room with all of my classmates every week. And so this conversation, Tom, feels like a full circle moment for me in a very deep and meaningful way. So thank you. I'm honored to be joined today by Tom Colicchio, an 8-time James Beard winning chef, restaurateur, and one of the most influential voices in American food. Tom is the chef owner of Crafted Hospitality. He also co-founded Gramercy Tavern, a restaurant that helped define a generation of American dining. But beyond his extraordinary culinary legacy, Tom has spent decades leveraging his platform to advocate for a more just and humane food system. He is one of the country's leading voices in food policy and hunger relief. Tom co-founded Food Policy Action, a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening national food legislation, and served as an executive producer of A Place at the Table, the landmark documentary that brought national attention to the realities and root causes of food insecurities in America. Many people know him as the longtime head judge and executive producer of Bravo's Top Chef, but today we're going to focus on the work that happens beyond the kitchen, Tom's leadership in food policy, his fight against hunger, and how he believes chefs and food leaders can help build a fairer, more compassionate food system. I'm also grateful to be joined by my co-host, Laurel Donnellan, the founder and CEO of Compassionate Leaders Circle. Laurel is a compassionate leadership pioneer who was building CLC before empathy and psychological safety were part of the mainstream conversation. For more than 26 years, she has helped individuals, leaders, and organizations create remarkable, human-centered cultures rooted in purpose, clarity, and culture. And with that, I'm delighted to pass the mic to Laurel to kick off our conversation.
Thank you, Meryl. So sweet. Tom, welcome to the Compassionate Leaders Circle podcast. We're so honored to have you. Before we get into our compassionate leadership topics, I'm a big foodie. I don't hold this against me, but I went to Cornell undergrad for hospitality management, and I've been part of the food world. I worked for Drew Nieporent way back at Tavern on the Green when I was 18. Big fan of yours and Danny Meyer and all the people that have been pioneers in food in New York and around the world. So here's my foodie question. I was watching Pang's live food show on Netflix the other day, and he gave you credit for making Brussels sprouts delicious. So I'm wondering if that is a true.
Every grandmother out there just rolled their eyes. Back when I was much more creative, that's how I would create is look at mostly produce. Proteins really don't change that much. And so I would look to and look at things like Brussels sprouts and kale and salsify and things that were just a little different that most people weren't tapping into. So I found that there was, ways to build flavor. But we certainly did sell a lot of Brussels sprouts and still do at Kraft. So I'll guilty as charged, I guess.
I love the creativity, and I love that you've translated your creativity with your wife into films and advocacy and all sorts of things. And I'm going to pass this back to Meryl, who's going to ask you about that work.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think in light of the world around us, I want to talk a little bit about how we move forward with food security and advocacy in a moment when, frankly, we've sort of lost some traction, especially in the last year. So many of the gains made by advocates around hunger relief and school meals and supporting vulnerable families have stalled or really been rolled back entirely. And it's a very difficult reality right now, but it makes our conversation even more essential right now. And, since you've been at the center of this work for decades, like, what losses right now in food security have hit you the hardest, I'd say, in the last year? And like, how do we take that, sort of channel it into healing and moving forward?
I mean, I think you kind of touched on this, is that all the gains that we made over the last, at least during the Obama administration and even under Biden, they've all just been canceled out. And so years and years of work, and not the work that I've been doing, the work that so many people have done, just completely got wiped out. And I don't see it changing at all until we have a change in our government. I mean, the work that my wife and I have been doing was mostly on just trying to change the idea around SNAP, get the facts out there, get good talking points around why it's necessary, who it's for, who benefits from it. I mean, society really benefits, not the individual. The individuals do as well, but really society does. And just try to get the messaging around it changed a little bit. And I think we did, especially with the film. I mean, you'd hear the way that, people who headed up food banks started talking more about advocacy and less just about managing hunger, which is what food banks do. They don't end hunger, they manage hunger. And this idea that we could actually end hunger if we wanted to. And so all of that work now is completely lost, and it don't know where to turn. Food banks are operating at a huge deficit right now, because not only did they cut, the government cut SNAP, but they also cut the amount of food that they were giving to food banks. It's just putting us back, way, way back. And this idea, this MAHA movement of Make America Healthy Again, well, I don't know how you do that when you starve people. I just don't understand it. So, and I don't see it changing until we end up with a new government. Hopefully during midterms, we can take the House back and hopefully make some changes, hold people accountable. I don't see it really changing until we get an administration that feels a need and desire to help people.
In your documentary with your wife, so much of that was focused on creating a sense of humanity around people who are just trying to make it work. And yes, sort of at the national level, it's awful. But what about local communities? Like, how can individuals and people chip in? Because we need them more now than ever before until we have a greater change at the national level. Like, what can people do?
I think you've seen that response. I think a lot of communities are funding food banks, helping the best they can. But again, there is no amount of money. I mean, it's helpful, but when you think about the amount of cuts and how large they are, there's no charity that's going to solve hunger. And that was what we focused on, is that this charitable work. And that's how I came to the advocacy around hunger. It was through doing charity work. It was through showing up when Meals on Wheels and City Harvest and New York Food Bank and God's Love We Delivered, when they all reach out to do fundraisers and do big events, they bring chefs in, and we provide food and whatever entertainment we can provide, and it gets people out there. And on a successful night, we can raise $2 million, and it seems like a lot of money. Well, you would have to do that every single night for 50 or so years to make up
forever.
Right. And so that's not how you're going to end it. Again, you can manage hunger this way, but you're never going to end it. And that's the goal, is to end hunger. Yeah. And it seems like a lofty goal, but it's something that we've actually almost accomplished back in the 70s. And it was a piece of media that did it. It was called Hungry in America. It was on CBS. It was Charles Kuralt, and they showed devastating poverty and hunger in the United States. And two senators on opposite sides of the aisle got together, Dole and McGovern, and modernized the safety network of for food. And we pretty much eradicated hunger until the 80s and Reagan came and it was all about charities again. And we saw it just chip away, chip away, chip away at the response that government has and try to, foist it onto communities and churches. And it just doesn't work. There's not enough money in the charity system. There's not enough money to actually make a dent in hunger. And so I feel that we're right back there again. We made so much progress, especially during the Obama years. And again, I think we're right back to where, we were in the 80s, where we're going to see an erosion of the safety net, and to the point where, people start getting desperate, and that's when things get ugly.
So, right now, like what are you doing to keep yourself sort of hopeful and grounded in this work while, the landscape is extremely challenging?
Right now, it's difficult. Happy to help out and doing fundraisers and stuff like that more than ever now. But I think the message that government needs to play a bigger role is just falling on deaf ears right now. It's just not going to happen. And so I'm just, keeping my powder dry, and hopefully we'll see some changes in the midterms, and hopefully we'll see a big change in 2028. And that's the only hope I have right now. It's gotten to the point where I just, people are desperate out there. And so, yeah, we'll continue to help raise money. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here in New York City with our new mayor. I actually was at a fundraiser last night for the transition team. He at least solidly campaigned around making things more affordable for New Yorkers. And I'm sure food plays a very important role, as well as housing does. Hopefully we'll see if New York could be a model for how we can go forward without the federal government.
My husband just ran, he was just elected for a county legislator position here. We live in central New York in the Finger Lakes region. He's on the Health and Human Service Committee. And I was like, so what are we doing about food? This was my first question to him. I'm like, what are we doing? And he's like, well, we're going to, and they flipped this district from Republican to Democrat just in this past election. And so they have some lofty goals, I think, just for food banks and just some support right now that hasn't existed in the past. So we'll see how that happens here locally. But it's a big lift right now. On The Daily Show, Tom, Ronnie Chang mentioned your book was written with love. And this sank in so deeply for me because, first of all, our work at CLC is really love-centered. When Laurel started this company 26 years ago, she was like, I'm going to start a company based on bringing love into the world, into the workplace, into all these places. And so, as you think about feeding people, it's like the most deeply way we can nurture human health, right? And at the most basic human level, how we can support people. And when we do that, right, the impact on the community, improves relationships and resilience and physical well-being, and all these things rise, right? When we have this sort of love at the center. But, if we were, just play a game with me here for a minute, if we could look at hunger through a lens of love and human well-being, talk to me about what that vision of the future, or how we would design and fund programming to support people from a loving, compassionate, humane place.
No, empathy is key to it all. Put yourself in the position of someone who's struggling to feed their family, right? I thought during the pandemic, when I saw, news reports of these long lines of people lined up for food banks trying to get food, and you looked at those lines and those cars, there were Mercedes and BMWs in those lines, and people who were solidly upper middle class who never thought they would ever line up for food, right? And so you'd think that going through that, there would be more of a empathy around people who are struggling. And yet, as soon as we came out of the pandemic, it seemed to go the opposite. It seemed to, people even got crueler when it came to people who were struggling. And I think the whole thing gets conflated with immigration as well. Compassion and love is at the center, I think, of wanting to make sure that people can lead a healthy, productive life. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about leading a healthy, productive life so people can actually live up to their potential and give back to society, right? When you get a kid who is not getting nourishment going into school, they can't learn. And, we have no idea out there which one of these kids who, because they're hungry going to school and they don't live up to their potentials, and what scientist that's going to discover some new breakthrough, or someone who's just going to end up giving back in taxes and in that way, so we're talking about human potential that we're not focused on. And so I think once you kind of cut through the noise of we're giving people a handout and move away from that, as opposed to saying we're giving them a leg up and giving them a way for them to sustain themselves so they don't have to stay on assistance, so they can better their lives. And so, and then when you understand what SNAP really does and how the average person who's on SNAP is only on for a very short period of time, relative to their life. People think it's a constant. They're on for 20, 30 years at a time. It's really for about 8 or 9 months. I think it may be a little longer now because of the pandemic and because of the economy, but for a short period of time, if you are an able-bodied adult with no dependents, you get about 3 months. That's it. So, these crazy stories we hear of people buying lobster tails and steaks with their SNAP dollars. No parent who's desperate and trying to feed their family is going to blow it all on a lobster. Most likely, your kids don't even want lobster. And so,
yeah, right.
They want mac and cheese.
Someone who teaches children and has young children, you're absolutely right about that.
Getting back to feeding people, in a way though, I having this conversation, I feel like a bit of a fraud because I feed people that can afford it and can really afford it. Come to my restaurant, it's expensive. I look at chefs like Dan Giusti, who, Dan was a chef working at Noma. He was a chef at Noma. He wasn't like some kid who worked there for 2 months and said, I worked at Noma. He was the chef there for years, came back to the States and decided that he was going to work in the school lunch program and is encouraging chefs to get involved. That's someone who's really, to me, is putting his skill where it can really be applied and really, make a huge impact. I have a platform that I use, and my platform that was afforded to me through, Top Chef and through being a chef. But I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that I'm feeding people who really need it. Not at all. And yes, there's a certain amount of love that we have in our restaurant for our staff and for our guests, but I'm not making a dent through the work that I do, at least the work that I do around in the kitchen. But it allows me a platform to talk about these and to start organizations like Food Policy Action and so forth, and to get a film financed, help my wife get a film financed so she can tell her stories.
Which was wonderful, by the way. I was loving it. I spent a lot of time prepping for this, and you're somebody I just have followed for a long time. And in New York State, they mandated school breakfast and lunch are required in public schools now. This year is the first year they've done that. Have you seen any results from that or any research yet on the impact that that's having across the state?
I have not. I typically have not been that involved in state and local politics, and I say policy, I should say. Focus more on federal policy. So I don't know, but it's something I could find out pretty quickly.
I'm just curious, as somebody who's sort of watched that process.
Yeah, but again, looking at other studies that are done when kids get breakfast in first period, math scores go up by 13%. And that was a study that Deloitte did. So the incidence of kids going to principal's office comes way down. Incidence of absenteeism comes way down because kids are going to school and getting meals, so they actually want to show up. And so that was a study done a while ago. So I'm sure the impacts are pretty similar.
So for people who don't have a platform like you, I mean, you just shared a great example of somebody who sort of left a big, fancy position to go into food service at a school. But for those people who aren't famous and don't have a national platform and are in the food world, like, how do they be part of the solution? What can an everyday chef do or an everyday person do to help impact, advocacy and hunger relief right now?
Yeah, I mean, use your voice. That's it. If you have a voice, especially if you're in your community, because most chefs, and we found this out for the work we did at IRC. I mean, there's big name chefs that are on TV, myself, Andrew Zimmern, people like that. We have a platform, but in your local community, you have a platform. You employ a lot of people. You're visible, and get out there and use your voice for things that you care about. I would love it if we can create single voter issues around food. I mean, that was kind of our goal, really, is to get people to care that much about hunger, that is a single issue that would get them out to vote. And, I think we still have years of work to do to make that happen. But when I hear a debate about national security, I also think about hunger, because I know that 25% of the recruits that show up to fight in our military, they wash out because of obesity, which is the flip side of being malnourished. A lot of households are buying high calorie foods that are have very low nutrition, but a lot of calories because that's what's cheap. 25% of recruits wash out because they're not fit to fight, that impacts national security, right? When I hear, again, people talk about future of our country, I hear hunger, again, because what we talked about earlier is that kids who don't live up to their potential are not going to be able to give back. So I hear that our country is less competitive. And so there's a lot of conversations that I hear that I can equate back to hunger and food insecurity that maybe some other people don't. And so it's our jobs to highlight those and to make sure that people hear those conversations about hunger and about food insecurity when we're talking about things that don't seem to have a connection with them.
I'm so grateful for that perspective, Tom. Laurel, I'd love to turn to you. Your work has focused deeply on hope, how it's cultivated, sustained, and used as a tool for meaningful change. So I'd love to sort of pull you in to talk a little bit about maybe we can have a little hope here in this very sad, dark time.
Tom, thank you for your candor. We are a very political leadership group at Compassionate Leader Circle. And I think what you did today was draw a straight line from voting matters, and your vote can change a person's life. And one of the things I think about, which brings tears to my eyes, is so many of the people going to bed every night in this country that are hungry are children. And I recently watched Michelle Obama do an interview. And like you, I look up to her and depend on you guys as leaders. And she was saying that she is lost right now. Yep. Like she is lost and heartbroken. And I'm heartbroken about my country and the choices that we were making. So what I'm hearing in this conversation, and I so appreciate Meryl's husband, beautiful husband, Greg, who decided to run, because that's another way that we can make a change, is if you have the gumption and the desire to help our country, please run. If you're not believing in our national politicians right now, invest in local politicians. And I appreciate you talking about the midterms. I think we can definitely think about, if you want to make a change about our national security and about children and about hunger, get involved in politics in any way you can. And let's get back to the 70s where we figured out how to feed each other. Yeah, I was also hoping that COVID would teach us how interconnected we are, locally, nationally, internationally. Like we are one. We are literally one. We whether we're feeding children in Africa or feeding children in our local communities, we depend on each other. And this world, with technology and climate change and all these things, we're closer than we've ever been. And I think fear has divided us, and we have to get back to love and compassion and hope to unite us.
Yeah, I agree. But, and this is what's so frustrating about this administration, is that cruelty seems to be their mode of operating. It's about being cruel. And they think for some reason that's manly, that's, this macho, we're going to be really, just cruel to people. And somehow that is going to, create a stronger country. It's just, and I think that people are getting tired of it. I mean, there was a congressional election last night that Republicans should have won by 20 points. I think they won by 8 in Tennessee. And it was a district in Tennessee around Nashville that Trump won by 20 points. And last night they had a congressional runoff and 8 points. We weren't expected to win, but losing by 8 points was another shot across the bow that what they're doing is not working. People are fed up. They're tired of it. The promise of helping, food prices come down for the average American is just not happening. And he can lie all he wants, get in cameras and lie all he wants. People still have to go shopping. When they go shopping, they realize that, something's not squaring here. And I think people are going to get tired of it. I really do. And I think hopefully it's the cruelty, that there's such a pushback against it, that we see more love, compassion, empathy going forward. I mean, Cory Booker mounted his presidential campaign based on it, and it didn't go anywhere, last cycle. And I'm hoping that maybe, the pushback to this administration is a more centered around love. And the thing is that people of this country, I think they really care and believe that. I don't care which side of the aisle on. People don't want to see people starve. They really don't. I don't think people want to see kids go hungry. I don't think people want to see seniors have to make a decision between medication and food. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. And I think when push comes to shove, people will choose a more compassionate route. They just need to see how bad it's going to be going in this direction before there's a change.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to get down to basics. We don't teach our children to be cruel.
No,
We shouldn't tolerate it from our president and our politicians.
no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't. And I don't think people are. I don't think it's going to last. I really don't.
There's the hope.
There's the hope.
There's
That's
the
my
hope. We got it.
that is my only hope. But it's
this is a chapter. I mean, I think the other thing I think about a lot is history. We've had some dark periods of time in our history. I think, I was born in 1960 and, I went through, as a very young child, the Vietnam War and civil rights. And so it helps to be a little older and understand that this isn't the first time where we were in a bad spot as a country. And hopefully.
No. But you think you learn from mistakes. You think you learn that when you call out the military to go on college campuses, you end up with Kent State, right? And so is that what we want again? Is putting this military, on the streets? Are we waiting for that to happen before there's a pushback? I mean, so we've seen this before, but I agree. I mean, we've been through major, during the 60s, assassinations of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy, but we've seen it. It's been bad before. The protests around Vietnam on college campuses, the overreach by the FBI and the CIA, infiltrating college campuses. We've seen all this. We came out of it and things got better for a while. I think we're just going. It's a cycle that we're going through, and hopefully, we'll all come to our senses one day.
Remember, I was 1968. I was 8 years old, and I remember saying to my father, "This is the worst year of my life." Robert Kennedy died. And Martin Luther King died, and I happened to lose both of my grandmothers and my great-grandmother that year. So it was, and I come from a very political family. So the political figures were as important as my relatives. And
my earliest memories is my mother taking us. We grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and Robert Kennedy's train, when it was New York to DC, it came right through our town. And I remember mother taking us to see the train go by.
It's a reminder that there are people that are visionary, that are willing to put their life on the line for making this country better.
Yeah, although you shouldn't have to put your life on your line to become to try to make the country better. That's
you're right.
You
shouldn't.
Make a lot of sense. You shouldn't. And yet we're seeing more and more political violence, and it's something's always got to break. I'm not sure what it's going to be. I have no idea, but it's something just has to get better, and you have to have hope. I just don't think this is the way we're going to end up. And I've lived most of my life already. I have 3 children, ages 14, 16, and 32. I worry about them. I worry about the world that they're going to grow up in. It's got to get better. It can't get any worse.
I have young kids, 9, 7, and 4, and they were building a community with blocks yesterday. And they built a food pantry in the community. And I was like, wait, like a pantry like in your house? And they're like, no, like for people to go if they need food. And I was like, how much have I been talking about this? Like, because it is so hot button for me right now. I mean, for everybody, but especially just hearing and watching so much of it. It's just heartbreaking right now. And in our community, I live in a fairly affluent community in the Finger Lakes region. And I was stopped at our local food pantry to drop off milk the other day. And there was like so many people there. I mean, I walked out and I was like, how do I help? What else can I do? What more can I do myself? What can my family do to help right now when there isn't help? There isn't a network. There isn't anything else. And so anyway, I just, as we're talking about kids and community and things, the fact that my kids built their own little food pantry with blocks, I thought was just very genuine and gave me a little bit of hope, I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, but looking at least the last election, the governor's race in Virginia and New Jersey, that was all run on affordability. Affordability means food. It means, again, housing as well, but a big part of that is food. And So I think we're getting closer to that single issue. I mean, people are, I think, are struggling, and they bought into the idea that Trump was going to make things better, and they're going to be disappointed. And they are disappointed right now. And so I hope that the reaction to that is that people just don't check out politically, that they go and make themselves heard on election day, because that's what we need. I mean, and food is powerful. Listen, the Black Panthers were a community group, and the government freaked out when they started giving out food. That's when they became outlaws, when they started giving out food. Who's the next outlaw for giving out food? And who's it going to be? We're going to go and get food.
You, Tom, you.
It's got to get better. I think a good place to start is in schools, because I think there's always less pushback to kids. I think that's why No Kid Hungry has become. That's where they focused. From share our strength to start moving to No Kid Hungry, because it's much easier to get people to feel some compassion around kids, less so around adults. It's great to see. There are several communities now that are giving out breakfast and lunch free. But and there's also the benefit of it, besides getting food to kids as well. You don't have the shame of standing in line and having your if your card doesn't have money on it, you get thrown out of line. My mother ran a school lunch program. She said she would never, ever not give food to kids. If they didn't have money on their card coming through the line, she would always let them through. We're seeing more and more communities reach out and make that decision to provide breakfast and lunch. But we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do. Well, we appreciate everything you and your wife have done, and
I wish I could do more. Food policy action was really great, and I hope to one day start it up again. For those that are listening and don't know, food policy action came about from the film, actually. Ken Cook, who runs the Environmental Working Group, he was one of the talking heads on the film. We became friendly, and he reached out one day and said, hey, maybe we should start something similar to like the League of Women Voters that his wife worked for, where we create a scorecard, and other groups do as well. We create a scorecard and grade Congress on how they vote around food issues. And at first, it started out with just hunger, and then it became farming, fishing, clean water, things like that. It was about our third year that we produced a scorecard that we finally started hearing politicians complain that they were getting bad scores. We were like, well, make different choices. We did that for about 5 years and started to really get traction. And we also got involved in races, and I think we made we focused our energy. We didn't have a ton of resources, and we focused our energy on one race and helped win that race. And it was around food insecurity, especially around college campuses. It was a bad year for Democrats, and we actually, helped get Gwen Graham elected in Florida. We disbanded, or at least I had some issues with leadership, and I decided to leave. And then after that, they had a hard time raising funds. But eventually, I wouldn't mind doing it again. We'll see.
Well, keep us in mind. We'd love
I was
to
like,
help
I
you.
want to come back and help. So when it comes back together, you come tell us, okay?
And then eat some Brussels sprouts together too.
I spent during that time, those 5 years, probably at least, 8, 9 times a year, I was on Capitol Hill. Sometimes every month I was up there. And it also, I think our third year coincided with the Beard Foundation started to do these boot camps to train chefs on how to lobby. And so they would come with us. So we would go with, 60 chefs and have, 250, 300 meetings on the Hill in the course of the day. Started making an impact. I would like to do that again, but I still think we need people who are receptive to the message.
Well, let's shift into you're a leader not only in this area, but certainly you run your own company, you've run restaurants. You opened up a new restaurant recently in Long Island.
It's about 6 years now.
Oh, 6 years. Well, I thought it was new because I didn't know about it, but
The newest of
I've lost my I'm not up on all the food and beverage things like I used to when I was part of the biz. So we like to ask our guests for one life lesson and one leadership lesson that you could pass on to our listeners.
Part of leading people, I mean, there's all the things you hear about, like don't ask people to do something that you wouldn't do, lead with compassion, which we certainly do as an organization, probably to a fault. I think in terms of leadership, set clear examples of what you're trying to accomplish. For us, it's pretty simple. We want to make people happy, right? Now, we do that with food, service, hospitality, but that's the goal. The goal isn't let's make the best food we can make. The goal is make people happy. And it's written on our office wall. If you ask my organization, they'll tell you that's the mission. And I think once you start there, now starting to make people happy, number one, we have to make people in the organization happy first. It's very, very difficult to ask our team members to go and make people happy if we're treating them horribly, right? And so that's leading by example. And I think also trying to stay active within our community as well. So there are events that we work on as a team. We also let our employees know that if there's something that's near and dear to your heart that you would like help with, let us know. Because if we're asking them to contribute some of their time and labor, we want to reciprocate that. In terms of life lessons, my 32-year-old was from a different partner. With my kids now that are 14 and 16, I've actually work a lot less these days and spend more time with my family. Luckily, I'm in a position where I can do that, but I don't feel the need to work 80 hours a week anymore. And it was also, I think that was a lesson coming out of COVID, where for 2 years I was home and I was making dinner and lunch and breakfast, pretty much every day. Got to spend a lot more time with them. I feel bad that my older son kind of got short-thrifted there a little bit when I was working so much and didn't spend as much time. So my life lesson is, you want to work hard and you want to succeed, but what is success if it's not about making sure that you're there for your kids and helping to raise them and be there for them? So that's the life lesson. Work hard, but don't do it at the expense of your family.
Beautiful. So we're recording this between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd love to hear from you, like for people that can help or put dollars into donations, where should we invest? What causes do you think we should get involved in?
So, locally, look at your local food bank. They need help right now. And it's a combination of things that you can do. If you're a business leader, you can go there and do a day where you're helping sort things and bag stuff and things like that. It in a way that doesn't move the needle that much, but it actually brings your team and gets your team more involved and helps them better to understand the issue. And then you have soldiers, that can go out and do more and come home to their family and teach them what they just did. And so getting out there and getting your family involved and doing a community service with your family, I think is really helpful. It also, shows your kids that you care about this issue and that's something they should care about. And so I think that's a good way to get involved locally. And you want to help your community. So volunteering is a great thing to do. If you can become a big brother and a big sister in your community, that's also good too, especially for young kids. I've been listening to Scott Galloway a lot, and he really does a great job of talking about how kids, if they lose a parent, especially a father figure, how their life could change drastically. And so, reaching out and helping someone who's young and become a mentor, I think is something that's really important. In fact, the reason why Place to Table was even made was because my wife was mentoring a young girl. Her family was living in a shelter in Brooklyn, and my wife was volunteering at a organization that provided dance classes to kids for free in the community. Kind of became like a big sister to her, and she would come to our house, and it was clear that she was hungry. And then she also had some learning disabilities. And in New York City, if the school can't teach the disability, you can get them in a private school setting that the city pays for. And it's not a fancy private school. It's just a school that can teach the deficit. And so we got her into the setting, but it wasn't part of the public school system. And so the principal called us and said, she's clearly hungry. She's not bringing in lunch. They didn't offer lunch because it wasn't part of the public school system. That was the catalyst for my wife looking into hunger in this country. And that's how the film was made.
Beautiful. So we should all pay attention to people around us that are close to us.
My mother always said, charity starts at home, right? And home meaning your community, right? And so I think that's a great way to get involved. But here's the thing. Usually we see that involvement happen between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's called the hunger month, right? You got to do it all year long. People are hungry all year long. They're not hungry just between Christmas and New Year's. That's when people have most compassion, especially when you think about holidays and typically memories and your time that you spent with your family. A lot of it revolves around food and food traditions. Well, if you can't put food on the table, do you not have those traditions? Do you not have those memories? And so we have to understand that hunger is year round. Let's not lose sight of that. Again, get involved now, but stay involved.
Tom, thank you for your time and your wisdom. We were so excited about having you. I hope you and your family have beautiful holidays. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
And that's a heart-wrapped episode of the Compassionate Leader Circle podcast. May your compass always point to kindness.
As you navigate the world, let compassion be your North Star. Join us next time as we continue to redefine success one heart-led decision at a time.
Lead wisely, lead with heart. You can learn more about us at compassionateleadercircle.com.